Welcome back, and today we are going to be taking a look at the new planes in the update, or at least in the dev server. We have the F111 for the American tech tree, and it's located behind the F105. And then we also have the MiG-29G, which is located behind, well, the regular MiG-29 that we already have in the tech tree. We also want to take a look at the Strike Master. It's not in the dev server right now, but I will be going over the dev block as well as the flight performance of it, because we can test fly it, but I'm not able to get it to work right now. I got it to work yesterday. Doesn't seem to be working now, but I know how it feels, I know how it flies, and I'll be covering it very briefly. And before we get started, I want to thank today's sponsor, me. I made some merch, feel free to check it out in the description. If you don't want to walk around with my logos plastered all over your clothes, you can always check out one of the mugs, so you can sip from that skill issue as you are dying in the game. But without further ado, let's get started with the F111. The VARC is actually surprisingly decent. Now, if you have watched yesterday's stream, you know roughly how it's going to be in a dogfight. I'll include some clips at the end of the video here. But the VARC is surprisingly agile. It rates about as good as something like the F8E. It can outrate the F5A and the F5C. It will not outrate the F5E. It will win the raid versus the F4E on min fuel. Will win the raid against the MiG-21 BIS, but I am saying that it does outrate a lot of these planes with the wings swept all the way out, as well as with the combat flaps. Normally I would say don't use the flaps in a raid fight. This is one of the exceptions, but you have to keep in mind that at high speed, this thing absolutely shits away speed. It's pretty decent when it comes to the 1v1s. It's the fastest plane in the game right now on the deck, and depending on the map, you might find yourself going Mach 1.3 without much issues. The issue is, however, you don't have much fuel. You can carry 40 or 2 hours of fuel and then 2 settings in between, but it has the same fuel burn as the F14B. And if you know how fast that thing drinks it, you know that it very much drinks it. It's not an awful lot of fuel, and you are going to be needing it in this thing because the power of it isn't that fantastic. Now, as of right now, it has the wrong designation. It's supposed to be the T130 or the T30 engine. Right now, the J75s, so that might still be changed. And that's also the thing with the X-ray. It's always a bit fucked up with the swing wings, isn't it? And you can carry the gun internally, and you get 2,000 rounds of the bitch, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's very controllable. You don't really lock up. You can rip it with the wings swept all the way back if you start pulling too much at like Mach 0.13. Makes sense that it does that. But overall, it feels quite okay. But keep in mind, the speed bleed at high speed is so excessive that if you get people on you or you start fighting a guy and you get third-partied, you're basically dead. The acceleration of this thing isn't fantastic. So if you for any reason whatsoever need to break off from a fight, you're probably gonna have an issue. With the wing swept all the way forward, you will find yourself ripping at about 1050, but that's really only when you have bombs on. And you can carry a lot of bombs, of course, which is kind of the reason for this plane. You can carry 50 in total if you want to sacrifice the internal gun, but I think having a gun or 2 bombs is a bit of a no-brainer, so I would run it with the bombs. The issue is if you have bombs on the wings at all, you can't sweep the wings back, and now you rip at about 950, making it not that fast. You're not gonna reach the bases in time, and after you've dropped everything, you cannot get rid of the pylons, so you are just stuck in that forward swept position, making it pretty painful because, as I said, your retention at high speed isn't good, your acceleration isn't fantastic, and if you then go 950 at the most, you are just gonna be eaten alive, and I don't recommend it. Now, of course, you can fly it like a bomber, but in AirRB, you're not gonna be that great off for that. Now, with the rockets, same issue really, you still can sweep the wings. Now, if you really want to, you can carry 5 Vulcans, of course, which I also don't really recommend. But hey, if that's something that you enjoy, be my guest. I am not gonna be doing that. Now, let's take a look at the loadouts here, at least what you can put on every pylon. We have a lot of options here. It's mostly bombs, and then some things you get missiles. We're not sure if it only gets AIM-9Bs on the live server. As it stands right now, you can carry 6 or 8, but again, carrying 2 AIM-9Bs opposed to a gun with 2,000 rounds is a little bit of a no-brainer. Now, all the wing is of course identical, and then we have the skins that we have here. We have absolutely nothing at the moment, but it flies quite okay. I'll give you one test run, and I'll run it on 45 minutes. I'll probably run it on 45 or an hour 2 hours is simply too much fuel. You become an absolute shitbrick, and you want to avoid that. So we are gonna do a basically clean takeoff. We have the gun internally, which is about 1.5 ton. The 200,000 rounds, I'm not entirely sure how much that weighs, but it's not gonna be light either. And then we have the 3 AIM-9B. So this is gonna be my combat loadout once the patch goes live, because we are of course flying this thing like an air superiority fighter, as we normally do. I'm gonna pull in the gear. The air brake is basically... You're basically flashing your dick. I mean, this is essentially indecent exposure. So we are gonna pull that in before I get demonetized. With the wing swept, you'll see you get a red line. You do get warned. It's not like you just suddenly explode, which is good. You can tell that the faster we go, the more it starts picking up. I'm gonna be pulling it in before I blow them off. Seems like we can go a bit faster, but I'll check the rip speed after we are done. Now the acceleration is okay. Yesterday we did some dogfights against the Su-17 as well. And the Su-17 is kind of a weird one, because we do outturn it, but we don't have the energy to actually chase him up in a spiral or in the flat turn basically. So if he goes vertical at all, we basically are left out to dry, because it doesn't have the performance to really go vertical anymore. The stall of this thing is absolutely atrocious, and you want to keep it at about that 500 to 700 km/h range if you want to be effective in terms of turning performance at all. I know this is not meant to be a turn fighter, it's not a dogfighting plane, but you should be familiar with my channel by now. That's what we do here. So, skill issue if you don't agree. We now go 1470-ish, you start seeing reduced speed. It will not rip until you reach 1620, and it will top out at about 1610. Now, I can wait until that happens, but I want to show you just how bad the retention is at high speed. Showing you the top speed isn't really... You just have to take my word for it, basically. I'm gonna wait for me to get map bordered here. Now we're gonna maybe dive a little bit. Maybe I can actually show you. Red line comes in, but we're still accelerating. Guess it's not the right map for this, but we are going 1550. On colder maps you will find yourself going a bit faster. But let's take a look at the retention here. Take a look at this. Like, sure, I know we're going super fast right now, but it's mostly about when you start hitting the Mach 1. So I'm trying to not full pulley right now. Pull fully, because then I just blast my wings off. But look at my speed here. It's quite bad. Now we're going 800. And of course you can then dive away again and run away from people, which is absolutely fantastic. But that is not the way you want to play it. You need to be careful with taking your fights, because the second you take it, you are strapped in. Now I'm going to show you just how well it kind of rates. It goes to about 560 kilometers an hour. It will slowly drop after that. So if I like do this, you will sit at about 470 to 500 once you've actually locked into the low speed performance. And this is with the combat flaps, of course. As you can tell, we are accelerating slowly. We do not have a cockpit as of just yet. But this is just the absolute flat rate performance. And it's pretty decent. You will outrate a lot of these planes. The issue is getting to this phase because of the swing wing design and just the speed that you bleed at high speed. If you merge with someone and you just do a flat turn like this, he is probably going to get the first shot, maybe the second. And after you get through that, you can win the raid versus a lot of planes. It's very similar in that sense to the F8E. But the F8E will, of course, well, win the dogfight because he can actually go vertical, whereas we cannot. I will now show you the wing rip speed. It's a bit higher than 950. But you can fold the wings in once you have your bombs on, or the pylons in this case. You cannot sweep them in. So you will find yourself just blasting your wings off at about, just don't go over 1050 and you should be okay. It's a bit of a rough one, but it's actually very maneuverable without them because it uses the tail, as you can tell, to roll. So even though you don't have wings left, you can very easily make it back to base with this. The issue is that you're gonna bleed even more speed because you lost half your wings. You also have some floating pylons here for extra drag. In general, if you want to go bombing this thing in Air Rugby, you're gonna be basically capped at a speed below a Sabre. but you are at 10.3, which is a bit of an L. But let's take a look at the MiG-29G now. And there's really not much to talk about, other than it's the best MiG-29 in the game currently, because, very easily, you have R-73s. These are the E models, they are basically just the export. They are the same thing as we are used to. We don't have the ER as well. It has the exact same loadout as the SMT. I'll show you that right here. Fuel tank in the middle, and then the same stuff on the right or left side of the plane. Now, the issue is, the SMT has an absolute dog shit flight performance because it's so heavy. The MiG-29G, on the other hand, is gonna be the lightest of the bunch. It's actually 65 kilograms lighter than the 912 that you find in the German tech tree. It also has a whole ass 100 kilogram force extra thrust. This won't really do anything, but all in all, it's just gonna be the best overall MiG-29 in the game. You won't really notice the differences between this, the 913 and the 912 too much unless you start really 1v1ing at a high level. When it comes to the average matchups, it feels like a good MiG-29, and that's a welcome addition. It's actually pretty damn solid. It feels good, and I'll show you just a test run here. And I'll run it on 20 minutes of fuel, because that's about when you start dogfighting people in this. There's not much to talk about. It's just overall a good plane. I don't think it's going to be better than the F-16s, but it's definitely a step closer to it, especially opposed to the MiG-29 SMT, which just got absolutely rinsed by half the raster if it wasn't for the fact it had good missiles. This thing gets good missiles, but it also gets a pretty decent flight model. Now, whether I agree or not with Germany getting a better version than the Russian stuff, I'm not gonna go over this anymore. I don't really care. It's always just a load of drama. No one is ever happy with additions, so I'm just gonna shut up about it. So let's take a look here. You can tell that the speed bleed, compared to the SMT, I'm hammering my throttle right here. Keep that in mind. And it actually maintains its speed somewhat. I'm on the combat load. I don't have the most amount of fuel. But with the SMT, when I was going on mil power to get a little bit less heat out of my engines, and I had to dodge at all, if you have seen my SMT video, you saw that I lost like 300 kilometers an hour in a singular loop. And then when I had to get it back, it wouldn't really accelerate. Now this thing, the absolute opposite. It feels great. It's not the old MiG-29 that we have, but it's still pretty good. And I just absolutely love this skin. There's nothing I can actually say about it. I love the MiG-29s. I always have. It's just unfortunate that they got nerfed. But more on that in a little bit, because a lot of the planes actually managed to get a new flight model. SMT included, but more of that after we go over the Strike Master. But there's really not much to talk about here. It's simply the SMT on a better airframe. The only thing I'm not sure of if it's the same radar. We have the NO19E. It has the search zone. Let's see, band I. I think it's the same, but I'm not entirely sure. 160 times 30. I'm not sure. No, it's the old radar, I think. So that's then the drawback, quote unquote. Yeah, it's the same one as this. So I'm not sure if it's going to get a different one. But as of right now, in my opinion, this is going to be the best MiG-29 that we have in the game currently. It is, of course, going to be higher BR because of the R-73s. But that's just the way it is. Now, let's take a look at the Strike Master. I'll see you at the dev block. Now, here we have the Strike Master Mark 88. Now, this is going to be the Battle Pass vehicle, not the vehicle that you can actually grind out day one, probably. Unless, of course, you slam a lot of GE into the Battle Pass. Then maybe you can get it day one, but I don't recommend you doing that. The flight performance of this thing is actually quite okay. We have the engine here. It doesn't output that much thrust, but it's a relatively light plane, and it does go 760 kilometers an hour at sea level and 800 kilometers an hour at 8 kilometers. Easy to remember because it's 88, Mach 88, so it's 800 kilometers an hour at 8 kilometers. The real issue is this right here. You might be able to see it. You see those two guns? Those are not actually 6 times or 30 mils. those are 7.62s. And it only has 2 of them. They are in the wing roots and you only have 1100 rounds. I'm not looking forward to this. I mean, the performance of these guns is going to be pretty lackluster probably, unless they are going to set a lot of fires, which I kind of doubt. The agility is good. It turns quite okay. 16 second, 280 meter radius. Sustained at about 500 meters, which is okay. It's not going to be that great, but it's at 6.0, so you are going to be faster than everything. So this is essentially going to be a better SK60. However, it has absolute dog shit guns. That's the real issue here. Now we have the loadout. We have 4 Snake Eyes, 4 500 pounders, 4 540s, probably AP bombs, and you have of course Snaps and Mighty Mouse. I mean, it's unique. I definitely like the fact that it's not another copy-paste plane. The issue is that it's yet again a ground attacker that is not gonna be useful in air obby. Kind of sick of that, but hey, at least it's kind of a funny plane. It's definitely unique, and I will be trying to get an ace in it with a single ammo load, and I'll probably tear all my hair out in the process. But, you know, that's gonna be for another video. Now let's take a quick look at the entire dev block here for the people that haven't actually seen it. Subsonic, good payload, weak guns, yeah, basically what I just said. If you want to read all of this, I will very slowly go over it. Because the last time I went over... This is a render, isn't it? It is. The last time I went over a dev block, I didn't actually show the dev block and then people wanted to see it. There's not much to talk about here. It's pretty cool. But yeah, maybe it can carry gun pods. That'd be great. But we'll see. Right now, I might actually run it with rocket pods so I can shoot down bombers and stuff without having to waste all my ammo on a single guy. But overall, plane feels okay. Not fantastic. Definitely unique. You'll see the video once it comes out. Now let's go back into the game here and take a brief look at all the flight models that have been changed. We have the J2M2, which is, funnily enough, it got buffed in terms of the engine power. The thing is, we don't know if it's actually going to be a buff, because they also might tweak the prop efficiency, making it a bit worse at low speed. So we'll have to see once it comes out on the live server. I don't want to test too much right now, because when they start changing flight models, very big chance they are going to be changing it again. So I want to just kind of gloss over it and give you an indication of what they are changing, not so much what they exactly changed. So then we also have a lot of the Phantoms. We're going to talk about the F4E, the F4J, the F4S, the F4Fs, both of them, and then as well the Mirage, the Kunas 2000s for the Israeli tech tree. All the F-16s got changed, so from the F-16A to the ADF to the AJ to the F-16C, literally all of them. Then we also have the French and the Israeli Barugan and the Uragan got changed as well. We then have the MiG-29 SMT, that I don't have in the crew right here, but it's this one if you are watching it and you can't understand what I'm saying because of my absolute atrocious accent. And then we also have the Spitfires. We have the regular Mark 9, the F Mark 16, as well as the CW variant in the Israeli tech tree, and then also the Spitfire LF Mark 9. And then lastly, the Yak 3, which is this one, the Yak 3P. Wait, why is it still red? It's here. The Yak 3P, and then also, if you have it, I don't think many of you do, the Yak 3T. Also got a new flight model. Now, I did say I was going to include some dogfights with the Vark at the end here, but this video is getting way too long. If you are interested in the dogfights, you can look at yesterday's stream. I'll link it in the description, and you will find like an hour and a half of me dogfighting people, mackerel mainly, in multiple planes. Keep it with a grain of salt. The Vark, it does kind of suffer in the average RRB setting, but in those very specified, isolated 1v1s, where we don't shoot in the first head-on, it can work. But that's essentially all I have for you today. Feel free to check out the merch in the description. Feel free to check out the stream of yesterday to see the performance of the Vark. It might be a little bit changed, so take it with a grain of salt. But as it is right now, I think it's gonna be a decent addition, even if you want to fly it as a fighter. Thank you all for watching, and you'll see me in the next one.